Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar today, where we talk about conversational intelligence and how to unlock first-party data to optimize campaign performance. We are joined today by two industry experts, Charlie Farrell and David Dodds, who are going to be joining me in discussing how we can help enterprise clients optimize their campaign performance with the use of conversation intelligence. To begin with, let me introduce myself. My name is Sunny Patel. I run a business unit in AI-based customer engagement company called LivePerson. We provide live customer engagement solutions to millions of consumers via enterprise brands, and our AI is powered by over 20 years of conversational data. And we now power over 1 billion conversational interactions a month, giving us a unique data set for building AI. And our customers, which include some of the biggest brands in the world, have seen some amazing results using our platform with metrics such as 10x conversions, increase in conversions, as well as twice the uptick in employee efficiency. And with me today, we have Charlie Farrell, who has worked at Roger Communications for over 13 years and is currently working as a senior manager of search engine marketing. Charlie is based out of Toronto, Canada, and is a Sheridan College alum. And we also have David Dodds with us, who is a senior director of customer success at Invoka. He has 20 years of experience in database, direct marketing, and advertising across digital channels for enterprise customers. David also previously served as the director of customer success at Salesforce and has over 7 years of experience in the conversation intelligence field. David is based out of Santa Barbara, California, and has a BA in marketing from University of Sterling. Charlie and David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Sunny. Good to be with you.
Great. All right, so to dive into the topic we have today, one of the reasons we gathered today is to dive more into performance marketing based on conversation intelligence data, which remains one of the biggest challenges for marketing leadership. And with customer behavior changing rapidly, access to the first-party performance measurement data is so critical, as you understand. And conversation intelligence is a key to unlocking these insights to maximize the ROI of digital campaigns. In this exclusive webinar by Invoka and ClickZ, this is what we will examine today, which is how digital campaigns can be optimized with call tracking and analytics. And we'll also examine how tracking calls and how to attribute them to the previous consumer touchpoints, thereby unifying the caller data, and how we utilize this conversation intelligence to analyze spoken conversations. So the structure that we're going to use in this webinar is that to begin with, we will go through a set of questions that I will direct to Charlie and David, and both of them will participate. And at the end, we also have time to cover some of the questions from you, our audience today. Okay, so with that, let me start with my first question, which is, David, this one is for you, but Charlie, please feel free to chime in as well. This one is probably top of mind for a lot of the folks in the digital marketing field, which is that despite further delays to the cookie death, every marketer is evaluating cookie alternatives, and many organizations are seeing this as an opportunity to redefine the data exchange that they have with their customers. And the first-party data is much discussed as a way forward, and to support personalization, strengthen the customer relationship, and which is more safer both from a legal perspective as well as from a privacy perspective, and we believe it'll be more accurate. And despite knowing all these benefits, many organizations we know miss out on the treasure trove of first-party data. And So question to you is, how can marketers track the calls they have with customers and understand them within the context of the customer journey?
Yeah, thanks, Sunny. Actually, if you don't mind just stepping back one, I'll maybe start at a high level here.
Yep.
So the cookie continues to crumble, huh? It's breaking up piece by piece. But what it is actually pushing us into as marketers is the best practice that we always knew was out there, which is continue to enrich your first-party data, ensuring that you build a customer profile. And we have all these aggregated digital IDs, and we understand who's visiting our website. Marketers are pushing out media to drive demand and push that to our website. And then when you land on the site, even if it's not explicitly the call to action, often for a high stakes purchase or a considered purchase, the customer decides to place a phone call. So that's step one on the pillar there. The first pillar there. Just understand that calls are coming in from the media that you're driving. We have intelligence on that site telling you that this particular person, this user, has placed a phone call, and the media that drove that demand. Once we're on the site, we can unify that caller data because we know who called, from which campaign they called, and then we can aggregate that to build or enrich that customer profile. Maybe it's the first time this person has called in, and we don't know anything about their phone call journey and with the customer or the interaction with your brand. And now they're on the phone call, we can analyze what they're talking about. Are they here to buy? Are they here to get is it a service request? Is it billing or support? Understand those different conversations, classify the reason for the call, and then we can understand the behavior and the outcome of the call. So I guess at the top level, as the cookie continues to crumble, we're practicing what we preach, and we're building the customer profile on our own projects.
Right. And Charlie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I know the death of the cookie has been kind of heralded as something super disruptive. It's going to happen, for better or worse, for privacy's sake. And I think, if anything, it'll just force best practices, to David's point, that should already be in place of capturing that first and second party data where your organization has it available. Lead gen should always be done. Intent should always be used to remarket. I think it's just going to start forcing a lot of organizations to actually start stepping up towards those. But it's really not going to change much in the way of how we can go to market, so long as you have data sources like this to actually stitch together. If they didn't convert, why? And then go back at them with the right approach.
Right. And I can definitely second that. So one of the pieces in terms of capabilities that we hear a lot from some of our brands is having that unified data set that they can track across digital channels. And that's what we're in the process of, is that whether it's via messaging, or via their website, or their app, SMS, or their voice calls, definitely I think that this crucial starting point to have all that data in one place so that we can derive insights holistically across all the touch points that the consumer had with the brand. And then go from there, right? I mean, derive the data, the insights, and ultimately leading up to some actions that the brands can take. So along those lines, here's my next question, which is, one of the core challenges with attribution is being able to create that unified view of the customer, especially when there's these multiple touch points that a brand supports for their consumers. So in your opinion, how can marketers, what steps can marketers take to unify this caller data? And I'm saying caller, but it could be messaging as well.
Sure. Yeah. So let's given Invoka as a call tracking technology, let's focus on the phone call step. If you don't mind, Sonny, just stepping back to step one there. Okay. We talked a little bit about best practice and why we might want to attribute phone calls, but this is a little bit into how. So Invoka serves up a unique phone number for the person who's arrived on the site. Now that gives us the opportunity to start building a unique single user profile to aggregate or to collect that data so that we can enrich that full customer profile as I described the first page there. If you click one more time, you just see as the phone call is placed, we start to understand a little bit about where that call came from, right? So we've perhaps got a Google campaign out there. We're searching, the user is searching for high-speed internet, and then we pass that keyword into the site along, using Invoka's technology to stitch that keyword search term to the phone call being placed. Along with it, we know which campaign, we know the click ID, and now, because they're on our site, so that we talked about the first-party data, we now know that they have a web visitor ID. So now we've collected the term that they search for, the click ID, which for those of you who use Google every day, you know how powerful that can be. You can go leverage lookalike audiences, suppressions, etc. And then you can stitch that to the web visitor ID and start to build that customer profile and understand where they're at in their journey.
Yeah, and was there, David, anything to add for the next slide?
So as I think as we continue through here, we'll start this was the tracking piece, and then we will move through the unification of that data. So this will start to build here. Again, just if you do one more click, yeah, you'll start to see how, your journey on the site is now, we're enriching all these touch points with your customer profile. Are you in a serviceable address? Like this example is for telecommunications, and oftentimes we find that certain services are not available within your area. So we don't even really want to have a discussion with someone whose address is not supported, right? Because we can't install service at their home. If you just continue to build more.
Yeah. All right. So, and then just building on that aspect of it. So as we start to unify this data, the ultimate purpose of this is to, have the data from across multiple touch points so that marketers can analyze these customer conversations and then utilize AI. And this is where AI comes in and plays a big role, so that we understand what selling points are motivating the customer. And that's really the million-dollar question, is that what does the customer ultimately want, and what do we derive? What signals do we derive that would help us, best service their intents, as well as increase conversions, and also understand how are they responding to suggestions, how are they responding to the comments from the sales representatives, and ultimately what was the outcome of that particular conversation, and use all of that to ultimately derive insights, so that for the future communications, the brand can utilize these insights to fine-tune their basically approach when customers reach out to them. So, and I know this is where conversational intelligence comes in. How does conversational intelligence use AI to analyze these spoken conversations and draw actionable insights, both for marketing and sales?
Yeah, so, and again, if you wouldn't mind just advancing one more so we can help the audience with a visual there. There we go. Perfect. So what we've discussed so far is unifying the different customer touch points up to the point of a call being placed. And now we're on the phone call, right? So the way that Invoka's technology works is we have a line for the agent and a line for the caller. And we have a proprietary machine learning tool that will predict the outcome of the phone call based on the context and the nature of the conversation. So now we know all the customer touch points, and now we're about to find out what's happening on the call. Is that person calling in with a high propensity to buy? For example, we now know their cart size, and we want the agent to be having a conversation with them about how to close the deal, right? How do we get that person over the line and to really complete that transaction? So our conversational analytics helps the marketer by taking any guesswork or any need to interact with to get a call center disposition here. We're analyzing the phone call, predicting its outcome, and now we know that either we have a purchase and we want to go get more people who have a propensity to purchase, or we have some kind of current customer inquiry and we want to make sure that we're not spending more media dollars driving more customer service or billing or support type inquiries.
That's right. Charlie, please feel free to chime in if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think David brought up a great point. Historically, trying to use call center dispositions, we found they were about 50% accurate at best, and there was a shocking correlation between whatever the first drop-down option was and what the agent selected, especially when they're being measured on things like average call handle time in most places. Whereas most of my Invoka signals are averaging over 90% accuracy, and they are automatic. I have them within a few seconds of the call being finished, and they give you incredible power to go after the right audience or suppress and exclude people who might not be in the right channel and be burning up your ad dollars.
Yeah. And this is something, by the way, at LivePerson, the conversational cloud platform that we offer to enterprise clients, we try to do this as well. And to add to the advantages you guys are highlighting, the other aspect that I would also say is that this also impacts positively the agent efficiency. So that during a conversation, if we surface these insights back to the agents, they don't have to, utilize, either their own experience in terms of what works or, have that memorized. It's in fact provided to them on time during the conversations and at the right context. So I feel that honestly, the power of AI is to lower that burden for agents so that they can then focus on doing what they do best, which is really, having an engaging, positive conversation with the customer. Yeah. And
absolutely. And with the goal of reducing the handle time and increasing the conversion rate, right? So
that's right. That's right.
At this point where the conversation begins, if we can send that agent the cart size and which product they were browsing, it should help the agent set in context where the customer is in the purchase journey to help them close more effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that one of the aspects that's also always interesting for brands to track is that the average handle time is always not the same across multiple intents, right? And I think that those type of insights are very valuable because a brand could be doing really well in terms of selling a subset of their products, and they might need more help when it comes to certain topics. And I think that even in terms of training their agents to best, or their marketers, to best optimize for those topics, it's very valuable to understand how the handle time varies across multiple topics or product areas, however they want to dissect it. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, go ahead, David.
No, I was just in agreement. Absolutely, we're looking at, the handle time does vary by kind of need or by audience, perhaps. We're also finding at Invoka that the marketers driving leads and calls into the call center that maybe even aren't making it to the agent because they're people are hanging up because they're not being dealt with effectively or quickly enough, or perhaps they're being asked to go self-serve digitally, which is a good positive outcome, right? Not to get to the call center. But that needs to be factored in when you're challenging the handle time. How much of it is a human interaction versus how much of it is with a robot?
Yeah, and the key to all of that, obviously, is this first-party data that we started the conversation with, right? So step one, we derive the data, unify it. Step two is that we derive insights utilizing the data and, introduce those insights to the digital campaign strategy. So in your opinion, what steps should the marketing teams take to take to feed the insights from this first-party data that they've collected back into their digital strategy?
Yeah, for sure. So nicely teed up, Sonny. Thank you. We've driven the media. We understand that people are calling. We've enriched the profile. Now we know what happens on the call. Invoka's suite of integrations with all the technologies you'd expect, right? We're speaking specifically to the ones that Rogers leverages for performance, which Charlie will explain in a second. But Google, Facebook, Salesforce, anywhere you'd expect an enterprise technology to be connected in an enterprise tech stack. Let's push that intelligence to the place that you can take action, right? If that's understanding that a lead has advanced from stage 4 to stage 5, great, let's put it into Salesforce. Or maybe we're optimizing toward the conversion event to go find lookalike audiences for your Google search campaigns. Let's push that conversion into Google in real time. No need to wait for a batch upload. What's happening the moment the conversation ends, go find me more customers with a high propensity to buy. So really, once you've enriched the profile, understood what's happened on the call, send it in real time into your tech stack where you're taking decisions, and let the technology work for you.
Right. And what better way to understand how we or how you've utilized the power of conversation intelligence to make real world impact rather than take a real life example. So we will now examine a partnership between Invoka and Roger Communications that reduced cost per sale by 43% and a 2-year drop in COA of 82%. And Charlie, David, could you guys walk us through the example, please?
Yeah, of course. So just to build on what David already said, Rogers, I'm sure like every other telco, had a problem of calls that didn't necessarily translate to revenue. When you have a large base, you're going to get a lot of people calling in for complaints about their existing services, and often they'll just be trying to find a phone number to call, even if it's a Google search ad for new customers. So we wanted to increase the efficiency of our media spend because times are lean. We wanted to try and take some of that pollution out of paid avenues and put it back into things like SEO. And we wanted to get a higher cost per conversion, higher conversion rate. Back to the other point, we wanted to strip out some of those average handle time issues. There's a funny anecdote I wanted to touch back on. We actually initially almost penalized the agents because we saw average handle time creeping up as we were doing this project. And we actually used the benefit to realize because we were driving more intentful, more valuable sales calls with multiple products, the calls took longer. And it was actually a positive byproduct, and the agent shouldn't be hit on that. So we used Invoka to actually readjust what our agent targets should be based on our mix of products sold. So that's just a secondary great benefit. But really, the ambitious project here was to double our sales and see if we could get a giant cost reduction, because we knew we were paying for a lot of volume that just didn't materialize. And Invoka was definitely the right tool, to David's point about real time, to get those efficiencies.
I think you brought up a really good point in that example over there. It's this iterative learning and why it is so valuable to measure the performance and understand the underlying reasons for it, because so that's fascinating. So it's interesting that the metric that we would think would typically should go down went up, and how it ended up being actually a good side effect. And how to begin with, what was the intention for you guys to set up this integration?
Our media budgets were shrinking, to be really candid, and our sales targets, not surprisingly, were growing. So we really had to be more mindful of how we spent our dollars and the calls we were driving. And likewise, we were going through kind of a leaner period of staffing. So we were just driving calls to the wrong places, and our sales reps, not surprisingly, are compensated at a higher rate. And to have them taking questions about my bill for existing customer calls was just a waste of everyone's resources when they should be selling.
And this was all powered with the real-time data integration with both Google Ads as well as with Invoka.
100%. Previously, David made a good point about not waiting on a batch load. The suppression savings we got alone out of suppressing people who had converted instead of waiting for a few days to do a batch upload and wasting continuous dollars on media, going after them, and probably looking foolish and being wildly off the mark for what that person expected next from us, from a supposedly large company, paid for the Invoka integration itself. If you look at media savings. And then, looking like we were doing by actually serving them a message more around questions about your first build come through here, as opposed to want to buy the thing you had 5 days ago, which just looks really polished.
Yeah, and then I also I'm seeing that what you guys ultimately achieved was 2 times sales conversion per call, which is amazing from a results point of view, and also led to 40% reduction in cost per sale.
Yep. So do you mind if we jump to the next slide? So our journey with Invoka has been, to your point, very iterative. Initially, we were just optimizing to calls, regardless of quality. Then we brought in Invoka. We started optimizing to actual sales outcome using the AI signal David mentioned. That drove a huge part of this lift. And then for round 2, we decided with Google to go kind of a T-Rose approach, total return on ad spend, because we have customers coming in on low-tier internet-only plans. Then we have large households with traditional cable, high-tier internet, security home monitoring. Every family member has a cell phone. So shockingly, we want to get more of those households. But our strategy was just to a call or a sale. And we worked with Google and Invoka to kind of say, well, we can use the affinity matching purpose to say, this household is worth an average of X total lifetime revenue. I'm going to bid proportionally on them. And when I have that real-time API connection, I can then tell Google, as soon as that call's finished, that person pays 4 times over. I'll bid 4 times as much if you find me that person's counterpart next. So we were actually able to start proportionally spending our ad dollars across the available household types. And immediately, the biggest, I think, for all the big numbers on here, it was the 18% lift in multi-product mix we saw. And that drove so much revenue just by prioritizing the multi-product households first with our ad spend and telling the platforms we were willing to pay more proportionally for them. So still at a point of break even. And all of that was entirely because of the great partnership between Google and Invoka.
That's amazing. Amazing results. Congratulations. And now let's turn our attention to the phase 2. How did Roger Communications use the conversational intelligence data to optimize the return on its ad spend? And, again, what business problems did that solve for you?
Oh, definitely. So like to David's point, with the signals, depending on your tier, you can have a host of signals, and it's so much faster than waiting on the agent's disposition. So we have signals such as specific product mention, competitor mention, for things like suppression, tech support, billing, questions like that. And all of your signals can be active on every call. So a call finishes and I have 70 plus data points on things discussed on that call that are immediately fed back to the ad platforms. There is no manually doing that. Or you could do it in batches and it would just, again, be a waste of time. The retargeting ability it gives us for people who had intentful conversations but didn't convert, the ability that I mentioned to suppress people who have converted, and the ability to start suppressing people who were not calling about a conversion event but came through paid means is massively empowering. I don't think we've even done a good enough job of quantifying all the tertiary benefits. Reduced overhead. Our transfer rate went down 20% out of our sales channels. That alone is an unbelievable metric, and it gets overshadowed, of course, by these revenue metrics. But I've never seen something else that gives me that kind of access in real time to kind of bubble up these subgroups. And we had an outage recently. It was the tool that actually let us kind of track and figure out how should we adjust our sales targets based on the rate of mention and recovery over time. So we could kind of pull back and be mindful. I can't praise the product enough, and I don't think we're even fully utilizing it yet.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to dive in. A quick reminder to our audience.
If I just make a comment actually on a couple of this. So we're about to push Charlie on a couple of these items where we can get more juice from the orange, right? He referred to all the different call outcomes, and we're sending all of those outcomes into Google to help the algorithm get smarter. You can also, using Invoka's technology, you can attribute a revenue amount to that. So for example, a customer showed interest in product X. Product X typically has a lifetime value of Y. Send that data into Google to really weight the algorithm appropriately about the types of customers you want to go after. So Charlie, that's kind of one thing that's next on the docket for us.
Thank
and
you.
the second, and the second one that you alluded to there, transfer rate. So ideally, a customer doesn't get transferred, right? We know from the digital attributes that we've picked up from the page which product they're interested in, which locale they might be in, but anything we learn from the profile. So why not bypass all the noise and send them directly to the agent who can help with their specific request? So Invoka can use that data point to send the call to the right person immediately, rather than sending them through a queue, sales, service, support, whatever it might be. So that's
Charlie, go for it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, David, no, thank you. You remind me of something I critically missed, which is I think a huge underappreciated benefit of Invoka. You're right. When we wanted to work towards this return on ad spend approach, Invoka actually allows you, based on your various signals and product dimensions, to plug in a static revenue value, which a lot of people might wonder, well, why not just use a billing integration? You can surprise how many medium to large companies don't have a proper CRM setup or a billing integration with their platforms, let alone in real time, let alone to tie it back to a newly created account before they had that customer account number, that really important internal identifier. Invoka basically allows you to set up T-ROAS bidding absent a CRM, which is a multi-million-dollar setup in itself. That is a huge value add. If you think about your customer segments internally, the frequency they largely change their average value is very slow, very steady. It's usually tied to new product rollouts or seasonal offers. Invoka basically lets you skip having a CRM in many ways to get this kind of intelligence going. We didn't have one as an example, but we were able to do this over the last 2 years. I don't know another system that would allow for that.
This is, by the way, such an interesting case study, and there's so much to peel over here. Before I ask my follow-up questions, a quick reminder to our audience: if you have any questions for our panelists today, please do type them in the chat, and I will pick some of those questions and ask them. All right, so David, to you, and actually both of you, could you? I'm curious. When you ran this project, what surprised you the most in terms of the results that you observed?
Charlie, I don't know if you want to tell the anecdote of when you first presented some of the lift that you received.
Yeah. It was a funny problem to have. The results on this slide and the previous are really impressive, to say the least. So much so that the biggest obstacle I had was getting buy-in from leadership that no, this actually transpired. They could see it in our sales. So there was a material, measurable, we changed nothing else except this. But it probably took 6 months of go-arounds and QBRs with Invoka and myself just to shake the cobwebs off people that, shockingly, real-time data is impactful and helps. It was just getting buy-in that these returns can be realized with what should seem so obvious as all the great data points they've mentioned. Connecting those back to the platforms where you buy your media.
David, anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, you asked what was surprising. I guess I would, rather than surprising, I'd say just the emphasizing the impact, right? Because from inside Invoka's walls, it's not surprising that now you understand who's calling in, you can optimize your media accordingly, right? That's something that prior to partnering with Invoka, Charlie wasn't able to see, right? So it doesn't surprise me per se, but it certainly surprises our customers in their first couple iterations. Firstly, let's understand who's calling, now understand why. And you can really drive these results that are, double-digit percentages improvements in performance.
Yeah, and then you also mentioned combining search campaigns to improve the efficiency. So could you speak about that a little bit more, please? The advantage of having the insights from each of the campaigns, and then how you could optimize better ROI by actually combining some of these digital campaigns.
No, that's fair. I am a big proponent that a lot of companies will either go to their agency or their in-house media team and ask for a new campaign based on marketing taxonomy of a campaign, usually around a seasonal selling event. And then somehow that usually gets translated in platform to setting up a net new search campaign, when it could just be an ad group or an audience. Then you end up with these bloated platforms where you have all these cross-competing campaigns with yourself, often going after the same keywords. Invoka really let us step back and say it's all the same. If intent is there, that's great. We can serve the right product. So to the point now, like we originally had about 150 different search campaigns on one point going. We have 50 now, and that covers base and acquisition. It really, to David's point, lets you kind of step back and see what they're actually talking about versus the internal, we think customers want to be served this language. Well, no, when you actually analyze what they're saying, and then because Invoka so wonderfully takes the keyword term and passes it through, to your earlier point, you get to see the campaign they came from, the language that they used, and what they said on the phone. And then we've been able to go back and rebuild our copy based on actual customer wording. So as opposed to an organization speaking at people, it's worded as though customers searching it themselves. And because of having all those data points in one place, it makes it infinitely easier for me when I can just, it sounds really basic, export in Excel, see keyword, a transcript of the call, which is another incredible feature, pull out the things mentioned on conversion ones, and then build my copy around that.
Right.
And then one thing just to emphasize, I guess, Sonny, is that Charlie and the team do a very good job of actually practicing test and learn, right? So you'll see the words test and control in this presentation. It's one thing to say that marketers are passionate about it and want to do it all the time. It's another to go execute that, right? So Charlie's team is always experimenting with what's working, what's not. Let's optimize based on the insight that we're getting.
Yeah, and that's the way to build a virtuous cycle, and why measurement is so important. So let me go to a couple of the audience questions, and then we can circle back on any of the follow-ups we have. So first one, how does Invoka measure the impact of its conversational intelligence stack on cost per call, cost per sales, lifetime value? How are you measuring the impact?
So something we will partner with a customer on is understanding, firstly, what's the most important metric to you? And we will, as far as possible, and almost as always possible, they're basing it on digital insight. So we want to help you improve, let's say it's cost per acquisition. Tell us what the number is. Let's baseline it there. Now let's add in the intelligence that we're building from the phone calls that are associated to that campaign. And what you'll see is that the cost per acquisition decreases. Now, if that happens to be conversion rate, clearly we want an increase in conversion rate. But first and foremost, we'd like just transparency around what is your real business goal, your primary KPI, and we'll work with you to ensure that we improve against that. And then, Charlie, maybe you can speak to this. And we have oftentimes partnered with a technology partner such as Google to really help make sure that we're all sharing the right kind of data to ensure improved performance.
No, definitely. You mentioned the rigor around test and learn. I think part of what makes our success has been the really great partnership between our agency, Google, and Invoka, to the point that Google usually builds a data studio dashboard for anywhere given test. We have really clean pre-post measures, and all the data is integrated in one place for that view. Results like this can only eventually be bought into if you have that kind of clean measure. So yeah, I don't have another vendor that integrates with Google as well.
Yeah, and Charlie, more to you. Do you find yourself finding that sometimes some of these metrics could be in conflict with each other? So you have to pick and choose and prioritize which metric.
Yeah, the example mentioned earlier of, your average, I actually had we call them telesales, but our inbound sales group, complaining that I was driving up their agent handle time. Well, absolutely not looking at the fact that their agent conversions were up. moreover than whatever menial cost of overhead a few minute longer call had versus sales, their kind of core function. So there's always kind of the pick your poison. I often monthly have to explain my calls aren't down, my conversion rate is up. I'm doing more and more to drive out pollution, whereas it can be a fight of, well, we have bodies in seats because we staff for X number, 100,000 of calls, and you drove less. But they converted at a higher rate and overall sales are achieving. So I just kind of always bring it back to conversion is king. Everything else lends to it. And if you still have your targeted number of sales or higher, the other things are noise. They can be explained, or there might be a resulting factor, but you should really be driving towards a primary business outcome, and everything else can just be the story around how it supports.
And Sunny, just building on that a little bit, something that I'd encourage anyone in this particular space, in this telecommunications space, to look at, as well as other business models that are similar. What we typically see is that a digital conversion is worth a certain amount, a phone call conversion is worth more, and then an in-store conversion is worth more still, right? Mm-hmm. So just being very clear about where your thresholds are. Like, if this is a $200 purchase, should I be handling a phone call to complete that transaction? Probably not. I want to push that to digital, right? How can I understand from those calls what the customer is not getting help with so they can go convert digitally? And then I guess, or on the flip side of that, right, my cart size has just increased on the phone call, right? Which is probably a good thing. Now, it might take longer to handle a call because now I'm buying, five cell phone lines for my entire family rather than just the one for myself. So it's okay that if the handle time is going up, if the cart size is going up, at least in line and ideally more so.
I really like that tying in some of these metrics, that the brands are trying to optimize and doing that match with the channel. What channel is the most, that's super powerful, right? Because, as we know, each of the channels has a different cost associated with it. Yeah. So yeah, that would be, that by itself, like even matching the interaction with what is the most appropriate channel to continue that, and does the brand get the best ROI? Yeah, that incredibly powerful. We have one more question. David, Charlie, anything else to add before I go to another audience question?
I think just to round out on the question, that there was how does Invoka measure the impact? And my answer was kind of, it depends, right? We'd like to meet the customer where their most important metric is.
Yeah, and also to tie that to what is the primary objective of that particular campaign, right? So the second question we have is, what impact is Google Ads having on the ability of companies to optimize their digital campaign performance?
I'm going to look to Charlie to see if you've deployed this just yet, Charlie.
No, that's fair. Google, like I said, it's always a mixed bag. They're bringing new features and new products to you, but they're also the one selling it to you. So it's often kind of is this a pitch or is this an opportunity? And then regardless, it's often also, this is a new product. Performance Max is a great example. It's going to replace shopping ads as we sunset it. So do you really have a choice? I just kind of go with the approach of, might as well be first in market with it, gain a bit of competitive advantage for a while. Like I said, every time we've rolled out an integration like this, our ad spend has at least stayed the same, if not improved. So they're rewarded for all these connections. I just have to be constantly wary of true benefit versus buying from the same source. I think it's the evil of vertical integration with Google, but
and I'll give something of a non-answer on this one. Invoka does support a GA4 integration that is available to our customers today. I will admit it's probably a little early to tell the material difference that we've seen for customers who've leveraged that integration versus any legacy integration.
We're in the middle of rolling it out now from GA360, and so far, like, we're still getting our feet wet. It's pretty new.
Yeah, and also there's obviously if everything works as planned, there's always a huge advantage to being the first to try out something, but there's obviously also challenges that come with it, right? So what has you guys' experience been in rolling out the Google Ads integration?
Often it's making sure that whatever your internal media or external agency partners are well versed in it. I've been fortunate to have a really good Google team, and they're the first to help offer training and setup. And it can also be back to the other point around buy-in from leadership, making sure that there's just enough understanding and get approval, but not so much that you have too many cooks in the kitchen, is usually what I try to operate with. But yeah, Google's also, thankfully, super transparent about all their formats. Anybody who wants to learn about how to deploy something on Google can, funny enough, go to Google and learn. So they've been great partners in that respect.
Yep, that's great to hear. And again, speaking of stakeholder buy-off, so when you have, Charlie, like these competing metrics, how do you tie that into the conversation intelligence and the business goals to make sure that there's actually buy-in for what metrics you're trying to optimize across the board?
That's fair. I mean, larger corporations tend to get very siloed, and you'll always have different stakeholders who have, shockingly, the metrics that are most important to them tend to tie back to compensation, of course, and personal incentives. That being said, conversion, like I said, is always king. So sales, and then so long as you can make sure that you're hearing the other groups, you're doing whatever you can with all the conversational intelligence to reduce pollution and transfer rate, kind of secondary benefits that are helpful. If you're aiming towards your highest company's business goal, so mine happens to be conversion as an example, and then I just kind of prioritize all the tests that David mentioned on our order of priorities. So if it's acquisition, base retention, overhead reduction, I structure the frequency and tests that I do to support those. And it's really hard not to get leadership buy-in when you say, I drew a straight line back to the company's priorities.
I think there's one really interesting key metric that Invoka has seen across our customer base recently. We refer to it as a lost sales recovery signal. Now, if for those Invoka customers out there, you may see it as a signal code answered by agent. But that all that means is, did a live human being actually pick up the phone and talk to the customer? The reason I bring that up as a competing metric is the marketer is saying, I drove demand for all of these calls, and it's not reaching a live human being. Therefore, we've lost a lead. We're unable to convert that lead. Whereas the contact center side of the house is saying, well, I answer 95% plus of the calls. The ones that I don't are out of hours and we call back. So if you think about you've got the lead gen on one side, you've got the conversion on the other side. The bit in the middle is the really interesting piece. And that's where we're trying to get some buy-in across the board. Like, why did the call hang up or never make it to an agent? I think I referred to this a little earlier. Sometimes it's for a good reason, right? They'll use the website to transact. But sometimes it is out of hours or like, I've been on hold too long, those kinds of things. How can we close that gap when we've got the marketer and the contact center point of view at kind of different ends of the spectrum?
So you seem to be setting up this tension that exists in
healthy tension,
perhaps. Yeah, healthy tension, of course, and that exists between improving conversion rate versus maximizing lifetime value, right? Because isn't that right? And so what is that's actually, and really it's recovering a lost opportunity, right? Which is what you're mentioning, is that those dropped calls could potentially be, like future leads, if not, leads that could actually be active. So David, again, like these are the kind of things that are like super important to tap into, because I think that can definitely ultimately benefit the businesses. Yeah. How does Invoka help with that?
So we can use our conversation intelligence technology to analyze the chasm, right? The gap in the middle, And because we can apply, I'll give one example. We can apply that conversation intelligence, listening to the agent side of the house, to the IVR, to the interactive voice response, so that the customer's not talking to a real life human being, understand which path they took, and then when they abandoned the call. So that'd be one example. Of course, there are many, and the more that we can partner with our customers to help diagnose that problem, the better.
But at least what you're providing is bucketing, where the calls dropped and what path they took. So the brands can analyze that. Yeah, that would be very incredibly valuable. So that is in this case study that you guys were pointing out. Did you use any analysis for those dropped calls and tap into that opportunity, or is that something that you guys are planning?
So, Charlie, maybe you can speak to this, but typically what we see for the marketer, on the marketing side of the house, the lead gen side of the house, is you're either optimizing toward lead volume or the conversion, and not really in between. But maybe, Charlie, you can speak more intelligently to how.
No, that's exactly. Like in phase one, we were optimizing to volume, exactly. And we'd get a lot of calls and nobody would really care about the drop because just sheer overwhelming volume. We're down a place now where we're optimizing to not only conversion, but the value of that average conversion. And of course, the drop calls are important. They're usually a signal, but very often it's hard for me as a marketer to determine, did it drop because of poor intent, or did it drop because the queue is busy, or because of routing or staffing levels? Like typical call center, Monday and Friday, absenteeism is twice as high. So we always have to kind of take a step back and look at what day of the week was it? So I look at it as kind of a running overall average. If I notice that drop calls have crept up in the last little while, then I have to do a deep dive to make sure all my backend phone numbers are working correctly. And it's usually more of a signal and a health check needed.
Got it. I mean, this is what I have, given that I'm in this space, like I have so many questions for you guys. And this, again, like I said, sounds like such a fascinating case study. Is there a topic that I did not explore with you guys that you want to talk about more? We have about 3 minutes before we wrap up the call. Anything that you guys want to add on top of the points you have already made?
Here I am waiting for Charlie.
I'm sorry. No, I think I've spoken at length. Good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key takeaways for me, I probably no real surprise, but like keep testing and learning, keep experimenting, right? And then I would encourage any marketer who's looking at either lead volume or conversion to look in the middle of the funnel too. Like, but where are people calling into your brand as a result of a campaign that's been driven that are not converting for whatever reason? And let's make sure we're not including that in our media, right? You can optimize based on that. There are all kinds of reasons that people want to find the way to the call center and resolve their issue that aren't necessarily sales related. So let's analyze that and understand that, and we can partner between the marketer and the call center to help diagnose and resolve those issues more quickly.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And this is, by the way, again, from being on the live person's customer engagement side, something that we are spending a lot of time thinking about as well is it all starts with data and bringing them all together in one unified platform. And once we have that, the way we are thinking about it is how do we, first as a P0, first and foremost, surface that data back to the businesses in easily consumable reports. And once that is available, how do we then use that data within the reports to build insights, derive insights utilizing AI? And ultimately, where the target we have and the vision we have is how do we utilize those insights to, one, recommend actions, but not just stop at recommending actions for the businesses, but to take those actions in some cases where it's just obvious that some action is needed on behalf of the businesses, just to make the lives of either the marketers easier or the agents easier. And And that's where I feel that in this whole field of conversation intelligence, where we should be moving forward and how AI can actually help us get there. Is there I mean, it feels like listening to you guys, I mean, there's definitely alignment in terms of that's where Invoka is looking to make strides in as well.
For sure.
All right. Thank you everybody for joining. I don't see more audience questions. And thank you to our panelists. Charlie, David, thank you so much for joining us today and for your time. This has been such a fun discussion, definitely fun for me, and very valuable insights from both of you.
Thanks so much, Sunny.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and good luck on the continued experimentation. If there's any way that we can follow along to see what further results you guys achieve, that'll be great to keep track of.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as well, just as I did.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.